today I'm going to be ranking every North and South American country based on how easy they are to guess in Geoguessr. And this is a subjective ranking, so you can let me know if anything is drastically wrong. Okay, so we got Argentina. Now Argentina is fairly easy. I mean, most of it's generation 3, so you can have the black car that can only be found in Argentina, Uruguay and Peru if you're in South America. Also, it's usually fairly flat. You've got quite a few unique things. You got the red and white chevrons, you got the wooden A-frame poles, and you should just generally be able to recognize it. So I think it's going to go in easy. You don't usually get it mixed up with Uruguay, I would think. Bolivia. Okay, Bolivia is one of my worst countries in the game for some reason. Like, I really don't know why. I mean, it depends. Like, if you're in the desert area, you could easily get it mixed up with northern Chile or Peru. And if you're in, like, the Amazon, like, grassy area, it's easy to get it mixed up with Brazil. Although the coverage is very limited, but for me, I just always fail it for whatever reason, so I'm going to put it in hard. Brazil. Okay, well, luckily, okay, I should have said this at the beginning. This is not talking about how easy it is to region guess in the country, because Brazil would be an easy bottom at the list kind of country, but recognizing it isn't too bad. They use unique chevrons because they use yellow on black ones, while the rest of South America uses black on yellow ones. But besides that, they've also got black backs of the signs. You got the Brazilian cross, which is just the Colombian cross, but a little bit different. They've got, well, there's the typical South American antenna, so you won't find that in Chile or Argentina. I know this is about ranking how easy every South American country is to guess, but I'm also considering other countries not in this region. And one of the easiest countries to get Brazil mixed up with is, of course, Cambodia, because of the dirt. And of course, Cambodia just so happens to also drive on the right. Although, you should be able to, like, if you see any language, obviously you will be fine, and any sign you will be fine. It's just in the extremely rural rounds where you get those two places mixed up. However, deciding in where to put it is the difficult part. They've also got unique poles. Yeah, so unique poles, nearly unique dirt, unique signage, unique chevrons. I think it has to go in easy still. Like, it's not that difficult. Okay, Canada is where it begins to get a little bit more difficult. Of course, the easiest country to get Canada mixed up with is the US. However, I think it's a bit easier than the US simply because of how, like, unique Canada can look, especially if you're up there in Yukon, and even Newfoundland looks fairly different. If you're in Quebec, that should be fairly easy. So it's definitely, I wouldn't say it's hard, it's really not too bad, but simply because of the US, and you could even get, like, Norway, Sweden and Finland mixed up there, but just because of that, I think I'll put it in average. Like, it's really not too bad. Okay, Chile next. Now, Chile can look like many places. You got the huge deserty area up north, which as I already said before, you can get mixed up with Peru and Bolivia. There's, of course, the famous Chile white car generation 3 coverage, and that usually saves you. Like, you should be able to, most of the time, differentiate Chile from Bolivia and Peru, especially if you're not in the far north. I think it's a little bit more difficult than Argentina simply because of how different it can look within the country. But I still think it's just average, I would say. Okay, we got Colombia next, and Colombia is one of the easiest countries if you highly consider meta, because they got yellow plates, and not just yellow plates, they got, like, thick yellow plates that look almost orange, and they've got the Colombian crosses, which is found on basically every single sign, and unlike Brazil, the backs of the signs are white, so you're not going to get those two mixed up. However, if you're just in an open field, then it becomes really difficult. But on the contrary, if you just see one car or one sign, you should be fine. So I think that is enough to consider it easy. Yes, extremely rural rounds will be fairly difficult, but the chance of not seeing one sign or one car, I think, is fairly low, especially if you're playing not an extremely difficult map. Now this is Costa Rica, which I have not seen in probably years, but there is technically coverage of it. Only in the capital San Jose, of course. And all of this coverage is Trekker, so I think it should pretty much be free. The only way you'd get this wrong, I think, is if you forget that it's in the game, which is a completely valid reason because of how rare it is. So I think that's pretty much all I know about it. Okay, Ecuador next. Ecuador's a bit of a strange one. There's not really too much going on with it in terms of meta. You've got the bollards, which are fairly common. I can't think. You got concrete roads, which are fairly common, but that's an arguable meta. I can't really think of much else. They've probably got, signs, poles and stuff, but I can't think of any at the moment. But also, it's not too difficult. Like, you only usually get it mixed up with Colombia most of the time. So I'm thinking about putting it between average and hard. There's just simply not much going on with it. And also, I'm not going to be considering the new Indian Nigeria cam that they did to it. That basically doesn't exist. I think it is fairly hard, and I'm gonna put it in front of Bolivia. What I'm gonna do at the end, I'm going to reorder this tier list to make it, so that it's an actual ranking. Okay, we got Guatemala. Now, this is based on no moving, which means you can look around, and which also means you're always going to see the car. And if you do see, as in like the Google car, and if you do see this car, you should pretty much always get it. And even without the car, it does look fairly unique from the other countries. So yeah, you pretty much can't get it wrong if you see it. Yeah, I don't know why I went so long on with that. I mean, yeah, pretty much everyone knows the Guatemala car. Okay, no more needs to be said. However, with Mexico, there is a bit more that needs to be said. I think it's fairly difficult because you often see very rural rounds, which you could easily get mixed up with the US or even stuff like Brazil or Peru or pretty much any South American country. And I think it's pretty difficult, especially if you're not in like some very distinct area, like, I don't know, Baja California or Yucatan or something like that. There's no unique car. The poles, at least for me, aren't particularly memorable. The plates, I think it's just short white plates, like a few other places. So I think for me it's either between average or hard. Because I definitely wouldn't put it in easy. Okay, I've decided I'm going to put it between Ecuador and Bolivia. I think that makes the most sense. Peru is also not completely free. I mean, if you're in like the Amazon kind of coverage, which is very rare to be fair, then it could get a little bit difficult. But if you're just in the regular coverage, you should be able to recognize it just by the landscape. Like, it's not like it is fairly distinct. I think most people would agree with that. Yeah, I can't really think of much else to say about it, so I think I'm just going to put it in easy. It's going to be probably at the end of easy eventually. Okay, now I added Puerto Rico to the list. I know it's not a country, but I think it's different enough for it to be considered here. Yes, I could have put like Bermuda, Guam, Northern Mariana Islands, whatever, but I think those places are just too small to really worth considering. Now, the only reason I put Puerto Rico on, well, one of the main reasons I put it on is because I just wanted to mention, yeah, if you see some Spanish-speaking country without front plates, you should be in Puerto Rico. Yeah, I think that is a reliable meta. And not only that, you've got the side antenna on the car like the other American territories. But I still don't know if I'd consider that free. I actually think it is. Like, you see so many, like, it's a hugely densely populated island. You will most of the time see a car, and you should be able to see the side antenna on the Google car most of the time. So I think free is fairly accurate. Speaking of free, again, we're considering no moving, not NMPZ or something. So I think Dominican Republic is also free. You got a completely unique car. You've only got coverage in the two cities, Santo Domingo and Santiago de los Caballeros. So it's going to be pretty much always urban. And just remember that it's got tape in the bars of the Google car and you should be fine. Okay, the US. They've got a bunch of unique plates, unique signs, unique quite a lot of things. However, there are many rural locations there, which makes things very difficult and can get you mixed up with many countries. But if we're just considering a community world as the map, it shouldn't be the worst thing in the world. There will be a lot of rural locations, but I think you could distinguish it quite a lot of the time. Because as I said, if you see just a couple of things, you should be able to tell you're in the US. Although I do think it is just slightly more difficult than Canada, and especially more than Chile. So I think just putting in average is fine. Like if you're in some city or something, then it should be pretty free. And ending it off in Uruguay. Now Uruguay only has Generation 3 coverage. All of the coverage was taken by a black Google car with no antenna. So the only things you get mixed up with, like just theoretically, is Argentina and Peru. But Uruguay has got quite a few unique things. Like, it's fairly hilly. I'd say a bit more hilly on average than Argentina. And also there's just something about it which makes you always recognize it. It's got thick poles, like thick wooden poles. And also, there's one more thing about it. Yeah, it's got unique road lines sometimes. So I think I'm going to put it in easy. Like it is fairly, it's not too bad. Okay, as I said before, I would readjust the tiers to accurately describe the difficulty. So for the free ones, I think Costa Rica is the easiest one. Dominican Republic is definitely easier than the other ones. Guatemala is easy because of the car. Then Puerto Rico, you might just, forget about it. Then for the easy, I do think Argentina is the easiest. I would say then followed by, Uruguay. Then I think Brazil is fair afterwards. Then Colombia, then Peru, that's fine. Average, I think Chile has to be easier than these two. And then Canada is slightly easier than the US. Then for the hard, I think that's fairly accurate. So yeah, it was fairly accurate anyway. And that should be it. Thank you for watching.